Hey everyone, Joe back with you again, and today we're going to do a panoramic stitch and deal with some of the things that often happen when you're just doing a panoramic. For this, I have a 6-shot panoramic, and this is in a place called the Garden of Eden in Arches National Park. And let me start on the one end. Let's see, let's get over here. So from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the first thing you see is that there's quite a brightness change from left to right. This polarizer was on the camera for this, and it just made the parts that were 90 degrees from the sun go darker. So we're going to have to deal with that. The first thing, however, is we need to do kind of a basic adjustment for all of them. So what I like to do when I have that is I'll pick something in the middle of the scene. So I'm going to pick this one, and this is the one we're going to go ahead and fix. First, what are the problems? Well, it's pretty obvious. We're just going to bring the shadows all the way up. We're going to bring the highlights down because that allows us to bring the overall exposure up a bit. That's good. We'll add a little bit of texture and clarity and a little bit of vibrance and saturation, and that quickly looks already pretty good. Now, by the way, this was shot with my OM Systems OM1. I haven't done any sharpening. If we go down to detail, you'll see it's just all the standard settings. Nothing's been done. But this is one of the things I love about this camera system, because Lightroom does not treat raw conversions from all cameras equally. Some of them do a much better job. Watch what happens. I'm going to zoom in at 100% on this image and look at the incredible clarity that the raw processor does for the OM system images. So it's something to keep in mind, because I have had camera systems, even fairly recently, that Lightroom did a horrifically bad job in, and the raw conversions were not really good. So consider that when you're looking for your next camera. So again, I'm going to hit the zoom out, and what I'm going to do is sync these all. Now, I've already done this for you, so you don't have to sit and watch it. But something else I would do when I'm doing this part is I would go ahead and run Lightroom's noise reduction. So if I do it on 1, if I click on denoise, what it's actually going to do, it would create a new file for every one of the images that's currently selected. So again, when you look at denoise, it's not going to look as sharp. You know why? Because it's looking at it much higher resolution. It's looking at it like it's zoomed in like 300%. And you can see there, it's saying that's how much noise there is in the shadows. Is that completely accurate? No, because it's zoomed in at over 100%. But anyway, if we let go, you can see it does clean up what it sees as some of the noise. Again, yes, 300% noise, but anyway, any cleanup is good. So what you would simply do at that point is click on Enhance 6 Images, and it will create 6 new images with the denoise and any sharpening you applied built into the image. I'm going to cancel this. In fact, if you really wanted to go sharp, you could bring up the sharpening on the slider way over here. In fact, let's zoom in again 100%. I'll turn the sharpening down and up, and you see how it gets that fine detail. It can be a little bit too much, however, because you don't want to sharpen big open areas like these clean pieces of snow end up in the sky. So what you do to see what the effect the masking slider is going to have, hold down the Alt or Option key, click on the masking slider, it turns completely white, then drag it over until you see just the edges being selected. That's what we want to sharpen, the fine edges. We don't want to sharpen big areas of blue, because then it's just going to add more noise to it. So you do something like that, and you're going to get a better sharpening. And if I turn or click on the eyeball here, I can temporarily turn it off, and your sharpening is much more subtle. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen here, but if you look up in the brush right here, you can see it just adds a little bit of nice kind of little extra sharpening to bring out details. It's a minor piece, but it all adds up in the end. So again, let's zoom out of here. So again, what would I do? I would click, after I've got all of my images that have been fixed, you click in, you click on sync, and you sync everything. I would leave the crop and the masking off because we haven't done any of that. Click synchronize, and then all of your images will be ready to go. So let's go ahead and select the ones that I had already done that for you rather. And okay, so now we start from the left. We can see Here's the images from left to right, and it's still getting brighter as we go to the right side of the image because of the polarizer. That's okay. We're going to deal with that in a minute. So let's go ahead. We have all images selected. We've got 6 frames here. Let's go up to Photo, Photo Merge, Panorama. So here's all of our images in the panorama. Now you can see there's a slight bit of movement. I shot this on a tripod with a gimbal head on it. Maybe I wasn't exactly straight because we have a little bit of this kind of scalloping in here. Also, Lightroom assumes that you're not on a tripod, so it's always going to do this kind of squeezing on the ends. A couple of things we could do. I could just use boundary warp and do that. And you know what? Actually, you know what? I think that's what I do for this image because that just made it perfect. Again, Lightroom assumes you're hand holding when you do your panoramic stitches. And if you're on a tripod with a panoramic head, it's going to still add these things in that aren't really there. So actually for this case, I'm just going to do that. Now, as far as projections go, probably 90% of your panoramic stitches are going to be done in cylindrical, but let's take a look at spherical, which is going to compress it a little bit vertically, and you have to make the call, which do you like better? And I'm trying to remember the place. Which do I like better? You know, I hate to say it, but I actually think I like spherical here. Why? Because the mid-range area in here gets a little bit smaller. On this one, there's a little bit too much distance from the bottom up to where the rock formations go. So I'm going to let the software go ahead and do that little bit of compression. Perspective is probably going to get weird here. Yeah, perspective got weird. So we're going to ignore that one. Spherical, and let's hit merge. All right, so here's our image, and actually I had it backwards, left to right. The lighter part is actually over here, and it's a little darker on the right. You can also see it happening in the sky. And again, as you get 90 degrees from the sun, the polarizer has a greater effect, so it gets darker. So how do we fix this? Fortunately, Lightroom makes it really easy. Let's go up to the masking panel up here. We're going to do a linear gradient right across the image. So I can see it's just the darkening part is taking place kind of in here in this area. So let's click and drag across. I think about like that. So what we're doing is we have a gradated transition from the middle off to the right hand side. And again, one more time, the way the gradient filter works is from red, the red dot, to where you started out here is going to be at 100% of whatever I do with the sliders. It will fade from 100% to 50% on the black square, and then fade from 50% to 0 on the right. So let's bring the exposure down a little bit until that the left side kind of tone, the tone looks the same as the right. And it didn't take a lot. I might want to bring down the sky a little bit more. I'm really looking at the foreground. Okay, let's do the foreground. And we can still see that the sky is lighter here. So you know what? I'm going to do a double one here. Let's go up and create a new mask, and we're going to choose a linear gradient again. This time it seems to be starting a little over here more. So let's come into like this. Except now I don't want to affect the foreground. I just want to get the sky. So here's what we're going to do. I want just the sky. I don't want the foreground. So how do we get that? Well, click on here and tell it intersect the mask with the sky. So I just want it to show me everywhere where it's the linear gradient plus the sky. And look what it just did. Now I can bring the exposure down a little bit just there. And you know, the blue looks a little bit cyan for me over there. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue into it. And there we go. It's evened it out. Now, there's a lot of stuff over here that I don't know that we need. There's not a lot going on here. So we're probably going to go ahead and do a crop. In fact, there's a little too much on the bottom everywhere. So let's hit the R key. And I'm going to bring it up to about, I think about here. And there's also nothing going on here. So let's bring this in so that I want to have a piece of this formation actually breaking the plane of the left edge. Why? Because if we don't, it kind of rolls you out of the image if you look over here. But if we just come in and just go into it a bit, now it's something that actually stops you and makes you stay in the image. Great. One other thing, while we're here, let's go ahead, go down to Effects, and add a vignette. Again, my favorite is -12. And I think we're looking pretty good. Let's go to full screen. So I'm going to hit the F key. And, you know, that's pretty darn good. If we go ahead again and zoom, let's zoom in at 100%. And you see the software redraw it. There we go. There's the redraw. Pretty good. Now, I still think that this area over here is a little too bright. It may have been, but we don't want it to be. So let's get out of the full screen, and we're going to use another brush. This time we're going to actually use a brush. So I create new mask, brush, or the letter K. And let's see, auto mask, I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to try to not affect the little foliage there. And these areas that are just a little bit too bright, I want to bring them down, and I want to warm them up a little bit. Give them a little more of the orange like we have over on the right here. So let's bring the exposure down a bit. And let's make it a little more orange. How do you do that? Well, it's not blue. We got to add a little bit of yellow to it. All right, so I'm going to hit enter on that. And you know what? I still think compositionally, I think I want a little bit more on the less on the left rather. I'm going to hit the R key again, and I'm going to bring this in because I don't want you focusing over here. I want this to be the star. So I'm going to include less of the left and also allow me to get these two big pieces closer to one of the golden ratio grids. Maybe I'll add a little bit more to the bottom as well. Let's hit enter on that. Yeah, that works a lot better because you're not as focused on here. You're going to go here. And also notice that when we redid the crop, by choosing the post-crop vignette, the vignette follows. How cool is that? All right, how can I help this along a little bit? I want to help the viewer get the eye here, so we're going to do another mask with a brush. This time I'm going to turn off auto mask. I want to help the viewer kind of get up to this area here. I'm going to just make that a little bit brighter. Now I got some of the sky, which I don't want. So what I can do is click on, So what I can do is click on the mask, click on subtract, and we'll just subtract the sky this time. There we go. So let's go ahead and add a little brightness there. I'm going to add brightness, but I'm going to darken the blacks a little bit, which will darken the shadow. It's in essence going to add a little bit of contrast to that place. And I think that's looking better. So we'll hit a couple of enters. Let's take a look at it full screen. And I think we have a pretty cool image. Now, while we're here, I'm going to do one more crop, and you can do with this what you will. Think about the composition. Yes, this is showing the place. So let's go to full screen. I'm going to give it a 3 rating so I have it. And let's create a copy of this, a virtual copy, which is Command or Control apostrophe. And I'm going to try another crop. And really, when you're doing cropping, like my friend Rick Salmon says, be merciless. And yes, this thing is here, but again, this formation over here is kind of the star of the show. So can we make a more powerful image, or at least a more focused image, by, again, being merciless with that crop? And also, this time we get the major formation right on one of our lines. And I have to admit, yes, it would make maybe a better small print, but I don't like it as well because it's taking away what's really here and how amazing this whole place is. So, I think that's the answer. While we're here, I'm going to go back to our basics on everything. I'm going to add a little dehaze to this. Oh yeah, to add a little bit, just kind of a depth to the shadows. And I think I actually want the sky a little bit brighter because the polarizer did bring it down a bit. So let's create a new mask and select the sky and bring the entire exposure up a little bit. Yes. Now this is in Utah. The sky out there is really supernaturally blue, but I don't want it to be so dark to be unnatural. And I think we have a good result here. So we can hit enter on all those things. And when you consider, I'm just going to show you a piece of the image just to show you full screen. So here's a piece of one of the frames that we were working with. And we took this with our panoramic and turned it into that. And that is absolutely glorious. And it is super sharp. Take a look again. We look at 100%. as that draws in. Look at how clean this is. And people have asked me, do I miss having 42 megapixels or so with my previous cameras? And the answer is no. Why? Because look at that. And let's see the pixel count. This was a 6-shot pano. I do these all the time. Look at that. I've got a 9,000 pixel across image. How big could I make this print? I actually have one. I've got a 60-inch print of this, but how big could I make it? Well, 9,028. 9,028. How many DPI do you really need? Realistically, you want to have about 150 DPI. Anything there or above, you really can't tell the difference between 150 and 300 when you actually have it printed. If I divide this by 150, that gives me a 60-inch print. So there we go. And that's how big a print I have of this. So there you go. Panoramic. You can get a lot out of even a 20 megapixel camera like this one is. You can see that the sharpness is incredible. There you go. As that draws in, let it draw in. Come on. Lightroom has a little delay. There you go. You see the little pop. And look at the clarity and the beauty of that. How clean it is. And we ended up with a 9,000 pixel across image. Great print. I do have it. Haven't framed it yet, so when that happens, I will show it to you. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't shot panoramics before, they do such a wonderful job of really telling a better story of the place. And a place like this, this is Moab in January, by the way. We will be back there this year if you want to join us. When you get this little bit of frosting of snow, it adds so much to the image, and it makes the oranges just pop of the rocks around it. So that's it. Thanks for joining me. I hope to see you online again soon. Till next time, be well. Have a great week. Bye-bye.